traveling with children.
From the time of the first pregnancy through bringing up 3 girls, Gun and my overland exploration barely slowed. And we succeeded not only in teaching the girls the wonder of travel, now that they are adults, they still want to come traveling with us. And now, following in the footsteps of my parents in this 2-part series, Gwen and I will show you how we did it.
So many of you have asked over the years, how do you travel with children?
And we're talking about little children.
Babies, 5, 6, 7, 8 kind of.
Come down with me, Rick.
To 10 and then into teenagers. It's
until they don't want to travel with mummy and daddy anymore.
Yes. Very sad. And then you wait for them to become adults, and then they want to come and travel with you.
And then they want to come traveling with you again.
Yeah, so. We're going to start with babies, because that's the beginning, isn't it? You've been a couple and you've been traveling for years and you've been doing stuff and you've been getting out and you've now added an addition to your family. And you don't want to stop doing what you've always done, but you're feeling very nervous about how do we take this precious little bundle into the wild. The first thing that I think any young mother and father needs to know is that babies are not as fragile as we think they are. Babies are actually very tough. They have to be. They've survived. The human species has survived for millennia because babies are tougher than we give them credit for, which is not to say neglect.
Yeah, babies are tougher.
Parents aren't. Yes, so this is for you. Okay, so this is for you. The baby will be fine.
What is that you're doing?
I am mixing up the cake.
The cake?
Yeah.
Why are we having cake?
Because it's my birthday.
When was it your birthday?
Today.
Today? And how old are you today?
6.
Why such a good fire today?
5 days to bake a cake.
And here's cake.
Okay, are you ready?
Yep.
I've watched the balloons against them. Let's go for it. Blow them out.
You're ready. Birthday to you. 1, 2, 3. Oh!
Well, how's your night, Cheryl?
Wakeful. Very wakeful. For this reason. Mom and Dad's bed would do.
Jonty? Fine.
Jonty sleeps through anything.
Well, how's your night, Sarah?
It wasn't too bad.
Wasn't it too bad? What's the matter with you three?
Interrupted by the odd.
How was your night? Here,
I
Claire.
ended up sleeping on Stephanie's mattress while she had mine.
And what were the ostrich doing? What were the ostrich doing? Say it? What? They were running. So, mom and dad with new babies, the thing to be your first port of call with traveling with the new baby is prepare. Prepare, prepare, prepare. You cannot be in the middle of nowhere and discover that the baby's lost the dummy
It's not yours. Give it to Francis, my baby.
and you only had one dummy stroke pacified, and now your trip is ruined because your baby won't go to sleep in the car seat without the dummy. So be prepared. Have extra. Make sure that if you're doing formula, you've got the formula that you need.
So really what you're saying is you need to make a list. If this is the first, because I'm assuming, when we go camping, we have a list, da-da-da-da. Now add baby, new set of lists.
Yes.
Do a list.
Exactly.
Because otherwise
Do a
you'll find in your 3 hours down the road and you'll go, oh heavens,
We forgot
We forgot actually
X.
something that would have been quite obvious had you made a list.
Yeah. We took our baby Stephanie, she was about 8 months old. We took her on her first camping trip, which is perhaps a good thing to bring here. Coming back to babies are tougher than we think they are. We live in a sterilized world. Okay, we've been conned. We've bought into the idea that we need to sanitize everything. You know, antibacterial wipes, the floor's got to be sanitized. We live in these highly sterile environments. So when you take your child out into the bush and suddenly you turn around and they've got a handful of goat droppings and are putting them in their mouth, your immediate reaction is to, let's get her to the closest ER.
Happy birthday, dear Francis. Happy birthday to you.
Hip hip hooray! Hip hip hooray! Hip hip hooray! Well done.
It was our friends Mark and Cheryl. We were in the Richtersveld. I've got footage, and we were sitting on a big blanket in the shade.
Yes.
And the next thing,
Little Catherine.
Catherine, and there's a shot of Mark hooking out goat poo out of Catherine's mouth.
So now you know your child has eaten goat's poo. What are you going to be worried about? Worms. So now you know your child needs to be dewormed. That's the worst that can happen. Really. I mean, a medical doctor out there might say to me, oh no, but all these pathogens.
No, they were medical doctors. Mark and Cheryl,
Exactly.
both medical doctors.
We're both medical
and
doctors.
they did not freak out.
No.
They just tweaked it out and probably gave them some worm medicine, you know. Yeah.
So, your babies and your children do not need to be in a highly sterile environment when you go camping. They're going to get dirty. They're going to eat sand. They're going to do all these things. Don't freak out. Obviously, you don't want them eating plants that you don't know if the plant is poisonous or not. You still have to be vigilant.
Yeah.
You've got to be
You have to be
vigilant as a parent.
But not paranoid.
But not paranoid.
And days have been passing. The people of Africa looked and they were working on the rocks, on the mountains, the mines that lay before us. Drums for the
you need to be prepared. You need to know that you've got all your bottles, you've got everything that you need to, so that you don't have dramas that you're now rushing around trying to find formula in the middle of nowhere. Another thing that with traveling with babies, they're actually very simple, a baby to travel with. They're in their car seat, and unless you're my daughter Erin, who refused to sleep on her back, she would only sleep on her stomach and would therefore scream for hours on end if you tried to put her in a car seat. Most babies will happily go to sleep in the car seat, and they will sleep for much of your travels. So they're really quite easy to travel with. Make sure at night that they're warm, that they we had another
it's comfortable, and it's also comfortable. I think whatever you can take from home that the child is familiar with, if you can get it into the car or van, get it into the car or van, because they'll be happier with everything else is unfamiliar. Give him or her things that are familiar, which will help.
I think it was that same trip that we did when Steph was 8 months old. We passed through. We were camped at an area, and a cold front came through, and that night I was still sterilizing bottles, so I had a sort of a Tupperware, and I had the bottles in it, the day's bottles in it, and I had it on a table outside the tent with water and the sterilizer, and we left it there overnight. It was so cold.
It was -12.
It was -12, totally unexpected, and Stephanie was fretting. Andrew
I took her and I put her in my sleeping bag, and I kind of stuffed her down here with me, and then wrapped. So my face was, so I opened up a little thing so she could breathe, and we survived the night. But it was
very cold.
Cold.
It was very unpleasant.
Yeah.
Okay. In the morning when we woke up, the bottles had frozen.
No, solid ice. About this thick solid ice on top of them.
So, be prepared for that kind of thing. Be smart. If it's very cold, skin to skin contact. If it's really hot, strip your baby off. Just leave her in I'll talk her because we had girls. Just leave her in the nappy. Make sure she's not in the sun so she doesn't get sunburnt, that kind of thing. So just think practically. Then another thing with traveling with babies is how to deal with the nappies. You're going to be using disposables. You're not going to be wanting to do cloth nappies. That's not going to happen. You probably won't have the water or the inclination for that. So you're carrying your garbage with you. You really don't want days and days worth of pooey nappies that you're carting around with you. So put on your list to get some nappy liners. As you would in a cloth nappy, put the nappy liner and put the disposable on the baby, and when the poo happens, all you do is you take out the nappy liner, and you can either put it in your chemical toilet, or if you don't have a chemical toilet, you obviously don't want to bury it, so you do get those scented nappy bags if you want to use those, or just put it in a couple of plastic bags tied up really tight and keeps the smell at bay.
Those are they biodegradable? Are they like toilet paper? Would they be?
No, they're not.
They're not. So
not.
you wouldn't
it's
even
like
put
a wet wipe.
Would it be okay to put it in a long drop toilet? So if you were camping remote and there was a long drop toilet, would it be okay to drop that in the long drop toilet? I suppose it would.
I suppose it would. I mean, it must eventually, but I mean, wet wipes eventually.
If it's like a wet wipe, yeah. So anyway, you got to think about the ecological impact of it, but it's far easier to handle than a
big nappy.
And eventually you've got a bag this big full of the most disgusting things imaginable. Yep.
Okay, so that pretty much takes care of traveling with babies. What I failed to mention, and maybe I should back this up, you're going to love this in the editing room, when you're pregnant, you don't have to stop traveling just because you're pregnant.
This is not changing of the guard, it's changing of the spade. I can remember my 3 picture tells a story.
We didn't stop travelling when you were pregnant, and we found out that your pregnancy had made you airsick because we went in, and we did a trip, which you're actually going to tell in a different story time. We did a trip in the motor glider to Botswana, and you got airsick. All of a sudden she was airsick from being not suffering from it at all, suddenly because you were pregnant. Yeah.
So you can travel when you're pregnant. Again with Steph, I was pregnant and we were researching our first trails book. And we went and did some really rough trails with me being pregnant.
And his footprints are still visible today, although the water has long since gone 70 years ago. That same hippo unfortunately was shot by somebody, and that person was fined 10 rand for shooting the hippo.
I would avoid the first few weeks in the first trimester. I wouldn't go driving over, massive rocks and craters for
big, heavy jolts.
Things like that. Be sensible.
And consult your doctor really on that kind of thing, because
absolutely
you might be very sensitive to certain things. So don't take it lightly.
This is not medical advice we're giving you.
No.
I'm merely telling you of my experience and experience of friends that we've travelled with who have been pregnant.
Yeah.
Because we went through a phase where we were all pregnant and having babies and we still travelled. So you can. Just talk to your doctor about it. If you have to take prophylactics for malaria or whatever, you might
think twice.
Yeah. Things like that. But don't think just because your life is changing and you're going down the family path that everything has to change. It doesn't. Okay, so we've handled babies. Now let's get on to the small kids. This is where the problems start.
Yeah, it's actually more difficult, I think.
It is absolutely more difficult.
You have to keep them occupied.
Thank you so much for watching. 4xOverland is truly independent of sponsors, and that means that our opinions, reviews and commentary cannot be influenced by commercial interests. Help us stay independent by joining our Patreon family now. Details in the video description.